Good evening. Unprofessional and petulant. That's one reaction to Sir Mark Rowley's behaviour this afternoon outside Downing Street. He's being criticised after appearing to push past a journalist and knocking a microphone out of his hand. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner had been inside Number 10 for a Cobra meeting about the violent riots over the weekend. Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
The Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police is often referred to as Britain's top cop, so his involvement in today's emergency Cobra meeting with the Prime Minister wasn't a surprise. What was Sir Mark Rowley's reaction to a question when he emerged.
Are we going to end two-tier policing, sir?
Extraordinarily, the Commissioner grabbed the reporter's microphone.
Did he just do that? Did he just do that?
Scotland Yard's immediate reaction was to try to downplay what happened. In a brief statement, a spokesperson said the Commissioner had a positive and constructive meeting with the Prime Minister and then added he was in a hurry to return to New Scotland Yard to take action on the agreed next steps.
Are we going to end two-tier policing, sir?
But one former Met superintendent wasn't impressed with the Yard's explanation.
It gives people excuses, not just writers, but other people, members of the public. By the way, we're going to stop you for stop and search. No, sorry, I'm in a hurry, mate. Can't, you know. It's definitely putting extra pressure on officers, and the Commissioner should know better.
Met police officers found themselves in the front line of the latest disorder on Wednesday during clashes with protesters outside Downing Street. Two-tier policing is an accusation levelled by some on the right that senior officers use different tactics with different groups of demonstrators.
There's no two-tier policing. There is policing without fear or favour, exactly as it should be, exactly what I would expect and require. So that is a non-issue.
Sir Mark was appointed London's police commissioner after the mayor lost confidence in his predecessor, Cressida Dick. He's been in the job for almost 2 years.
Understandably, commissioners face a lot of pressure in the job, but it's rare to see such a reaction from him.
Yes, it was certainly quite a jaw-dropping moment, wasn't it? And at a time when the Prime Minister is warning people about their behaviour, I'm not quite sure the optics were great. However, tonight, one other former superintendent in the Met, Shabnam Chowdhury, tweeted her support, saying Sir Mark drops the mic. Perhaps not the best response, but huge pressure on policing. Officers assaulted, abused, boroughs stripped, and the same rhetoric on two-tier policing, which he's repeatedly answered. Frustrated? Pressure? Give the boss a break. I also spoke to City Hall this afternoon to see what the Mayor thought, and City Hall is saying nothing.
All right, Simon, thanks very much. Good evening. Sewage is being routinely released into our rivers and seas. That's just one of a catalogue of failings found by the largest ever investigation into our water. The regulator has announced that as a result, Thames Water could be fined more than £100 million for being one of the worst perpetrators in the country. It's an unprecedented fine, just weeks after the company announced they're in such significant debt, their cash flow will only last until spring. So what happens now? Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
For rowers at Fulham Reach Boat Club, this is the reality of life on the Thames. The polluted river has forced the charity to adopt a strict set of COVID-style hygiene rules.
When we come off the river, you wash your hands, you wash the boat. If you have capsized, you come in, you shower straight away, you change your clothes. You're supposed to have a change of clothes with you, you know, and you do everything to sort of look after yourself.
Sarah is out on the river 5 days a week.
We see stuff floating about, which is not very nice. It's like poo together with like fat, you know, and sometimes with branches and twigs, and it's awful to look at, and it does make you feel, oh my God, I hope I don't have a capsize today, because if I do, I'm literally going to have poo all over me.
The club is so concerned about pollution it carries out its own checks.
And we'll draw up the sample in here.
All it takes is a bucket of river water at the start of the day.
We're monitoring ourselves, you know, we're very proactive with that. You know, we like to know what's going on in the river, and we follow all the guidance, and we're very mindful about not going on the water when the water quality is poor.
Shareholders at Thames Water found out today the price of the firm's failure to stop its sewage treatment works overflowing. Thames was one of 3 companies fined for allowing too much sewage into their rivers. The penalty levied against Thames was the biggest, £104 million. That's almost 10% of its annual turnover. The water industry regulator Ofwat insisted it won't allow the company to pass the cost of the fine onto its customers.
The company does need to raise new sources of equity finance. They're a £20 billion business. This is an important cost for them to meet, but we think that it's just another one of the set of issues that their board and management need to address. We're very clear it's not possible for Thames to recover these fines from their customers.
In a statement, Thames Water said, "We regard all untreated discharges as unacceptable, even when they are permitted, and are taking action to improve the health of our rivers as a key area of focus and investment." But that's going to cost even more money on top of the fines, and environmental campaigners aren't optimistic about it happening anytime soon.
Forget about HS2 as a big engineering task. The sorting out our water industry is going to be huge, and it's going to take many years, and it is going to take billions of pounds of investment.
And give it a little shake.
Back at the boat club, Adam's got the results of today's test.
So that is indicating, slightly poor water quality for organic pollution here.
As expected, the river isn't as clean as the rowers would like.
Well, so there's big problems ahead for Thames Water, isn't there?
Yes, even before today's fine, it was facing a financial crisis. Its debts are estimated at £15 billion. Its credit rating was recently downgraded, and there have been calls for the government to nationalise the company. Now, while that's not on the cards at the moment, ministers are saying what they will do is stop directors and senior executives getting big bonuses.
We have announced a plan to ban the payment of those bonuses to water bosses until they clean up their toxic filth if they continue to oversee this kind of law-breaking and pollution.
And while Ofwat won't allow the company to pass on those fines to customers, it has allowed it to increase water bills by around about £100 a year to pay for improvements at sewage treatment works.
OK, Simon, thanks very much.
Good evening. In a North London suburb, shops and pubs have boarded up windows. GP surgeries have cancelled appointments and nurseries have asked parents to collect their children early. It's all because of fears of a riot tonight. Far-right protests are planned in North Finchley, as well as counter-protests organised by groups like Stand Up to Racism. And it's not just Finchley. Demonstrations are planned in other boroughs across the capital and across the country. One immigration lawyer has told ITV News that he's had phone calls today threatening his life. The Met Police has deployed extra officers tonight, and the message from the Commissioner is clear. Commit crimes on the streets or incite violence online, and you will face the full force of the law. In a moment, we'll be live in Walthamstow and Finchley, from where our political correspondent Simon Harris sent this report.
This estate agent was taking no chances. The glass shop front on the High Road in North Finchley was boarded up yesterday, and people working in nearby shops and offices were understandably anxious.
I think it'll be much later in the evening. I'm hoping it's not going to be in the afternoon, but if we think that it's going to be coming up, then we'll just leave.
I work literally around the corner from here. I've just come for a coffee, and even that I wasn't sure I wanted to do.
We've got a vibrant community here in North Finchley. No need for it really, so it's very disappointing.
I wouldn't put the blame on any of the people protesting. I'd solely put the blame on politicians because they've done nothing to curb the immigration.
Like many traders here, Unal decided to shut his pizza restaurant early.
We're going to close. 100% is going to affect our business. We're not going to make anything today.
How angry does that make you?
Yeah, it's no good for no good for community, no good for business, no good for people. Of course, we are not happy.
A few doors away, neighbours of a barber say he painted over the word Turkish to avoid drawing attention. Newspapers covered the windows. At another salon, most of Andy's customers cancelled their appointments, although Andrew was having none of it.
I'm certainly not going to be intimidated by a load of fascist morons, and that's all it is to it, really. I think it's disgraceful what's happening in this country, absolutely appalling.
From this morning, officers from Scotland Yard's riot squad, the territorial support group, were patrolling the area, trying to reassure local people. Posts on social media suggested a local firm, which advertises itself as an immigration and nationality service, could be one of a number of targets in London.
It is completely unacceptable, regardless of your political views, to intimidate any sector of lawful activity, and we will not let the immigration asylum system be intimidated. They're operating lawfully. The thugs and criminals who are targeting them are not, and we'll stop that.
On top of the threat of action by the far right, there are also fears of a clash with counter-demonstrators. These posters have appeared in the area, advertising a demonstration at around the same time under the banner of Stand Up to Racism. The message from one organiser hinted at trouble.
We have to nip this in the bud. We need to turn around to the bullies, the Nazis, the racists and the bigots and say we're not divided. Actually, far from it. We're far stronger than you and we're giving you a chance to leave. You can walk away from our area or be carried away from our area.
The Met's riot squads may or may not be called upon tonight, but even the suggestion of possible disorder was enough to disrupt lives and businesses.
Simon, you spent the day in Finchley, didn't you? What is the atmosphere like there this evening?
Well, Lucrezia, understandably, there's been a lot of concern here today about how events might unfold tonight. It is quiet at the moment. Most of the shops are closed, not all of them. Many of them have had their roller shutters down. There are a handful of counter-protesters over here. These are people from Stand Up to Racism. But by and large, it's mostly quiet here. Feels a bit like a normal rush hour with lots of traffic. A couple of posters have been put up saying good vibes only, but there are a lot more police on the streets. If you look up here, these are members of the Territorial Support Group who've already been put into position, and we've seen a lot more parked up in vans in nearby retail parks.
And Simon, as you say, it's quiet there at the moment, but a really worrying time for many communities across the capital. And the Met Chief, Sir Mark Rowley, is sending out a very, very clear message today to those intent on causing any violence.
Yes, Sir Mark was very clear about throwing the book at anyone who's caught up in disorder. He said that there are more than 1,300 officers trained in dealing with riots who are on duty tonight. But perhaps one of the most significant weapons in the Met's armoury is cameras, whether they're CCTV cameras, lots of those in London, as we know, body-worn cameras on the police or cameras on helicopters. They apparently have the ability now to do retrospective facial recognition and can even recognise faces of people wearing masks.
All right, Simon in Finchley, thank you.
Good evening. Among the thousands that turned out to say no to racism in London last night, remarks from one Labour councillor the Met have acted on. Ricky Jones told a crowd, "We need to cut the throats of Nazi fascists." He's been arrested on suspicion of encouraging murder. It happened during a night of peaceful demonstrations designed to show unity in the face of this week's racist rioting. We'll have more on that in a moment, but first, here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
London's police chief was in no doubt. The failure of the far right to show up was in part down to what Sir Mark Rowley called a show of unity from communities. But with feelings running high, unity was not the only sentiment on display. In Walthamstow, this was Ricky Jones, a Labour councillor from Dartford.
They are disgusting, nasty bastards, and we need to cull their throats and get rid of them all.
That rant prompted Labour to suspend him, and later police announced he was under arrest on suspicion of encouraging murder. In North Finchley, there was another big counter-demonstration where again the threat of a protest by the far right evaporated.
I think it was a great show of solidarity from the community, and as people can see, we live in a very diverse community, so it was great to see all ages, colours, religions, everybody coming together.
I think it went pretty good. I think it's very important that we amplify our voices as one community, as one people, and representing the diversity of this community. We all came out, as you see, representation here today.
But many of the demonstrators came wearing masks. This is an area with a large Jewish community. The sense of unease at some expressions of anti-Zionism were compounded by leaflets circulated on X which demanded, "Get fascists, racists, Nazis, Zionists and Islamophobes out of Finchley."
Well, I spoke to many people who attended the demonstration in Finchley last night, and they felt deeply uncomfortable that there was a strong presence in the crowd that wanted to make the debate almost as much about the situation in Gaza, or indeed talking about being anti-Zionist and against Israel.
It's really important we say no to all forms of hatred. We've got to stand united against not just racism, Islamophobia, but also anti-Semitism as well. It's not good enough to say this form of hatred is acceptable and this form isn't. We should say no to all forms of hatred.
A week ago, far-right demonstrators clashed with police in Whitehall. Today, in a series of early morning raids in South London, police rounded up more than 20 suspects.
About 70% of them have got criminal backgrounds.
We've got criminal damage, violence, weapons offences, football banning orders. These are criminal thugs. Any suggestion they're patriots or they've got a cause that they're protesting about is nonsense.
Sir Mark predicted those arrested would be going to jail. Simon Harris, ITV News.